Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. So 348 for the 11th of Cheshvan in a leap year. The subject of today's podcast episode, or actually the next few episodes that we're going to be covering, is the role of the tzaddik in Jewish life. Atariq is a word that is commonly translated to mean righteous person, or holy man, or holy woman. A woman could be a tzaddikus as well. We spoke about the kind of technical definition of a tzaddik very much earlier on in the Tanya, where we talked about like the different categories of Jews, where there's the tzaddik, the rasha, and the benoni, like the righteous person, the wicked person, and the intermediate person. But today specifically, we're going to be talking about the tzaddik, not so much in terms of their internal makeup of what makes a person a tzaddik, but more in terms of like, once we've established that a person has this title of a tzaddik, has this title of a righteous person, how does this relate to us? What relationship does this have to our lives? How do we relate to such a person? And how does this affect our personal service of God? So we've already learned about in previous parts of the Tanya. What comes to mind specifically is like the famous chapter 32 of Tanya, which talks about the inter-inclusiveness of all Jewish people and how we're all really interconnected and one being, likened, like all Jewish people can be likened to like different parts of the body. And the tzaddik is known as being a specific individual who kind of embodies this unity, who kind of is connected to everybody, to all Jewish people on this more collective level. So this particular epistle that we're going to be beginning today, which is Epistle 27, was actually a letter of consolation that the Alter Rebbe wrote to his Chassidim upon the passing of such a tzaddik, of such a righteous person, namely Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Atariq, otherwise known as Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk. And this was actually one of the Alter Rebbe's mentors. So this was somebody that the Alter Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe himself was a tzaddik, and the Alter Rebbe looked up to this Rav Menachem Mendel of Atariq or Vitebsk, as did many of his followers at the time. And so most obviously when this tzaddik passed away, then they were really sad and really downtrodden, which is to be understood, right? But so today's letter is a letter of consolation. Today's that we're going to be beginning. And it's really, the consolation comes in the form of really understanding the role that a tzaddik plays in terms of the collective Jewish people, and how the life of a tzaddik is really very different than the life of the average regular person, and so thus the passing of a tzaddik should be seen as such as well, and what actually happens when the tzaddik passes away, and that it's not just that they just leave the world entirely, but there's something that they leave over. There's due to the nature of their life, due to the nature of a tzaddik's life and the uniqueness of the tzaddik's life, this also contributes to the nature of their passing as well, and what it is that they leave over to their followers in their life. So with that being said, let's get straight into the text and kind of explain and explore a little bit more as we go. So this epistle actually begins with a little introductory remark that telling us that this is something that was written by the Alter Rebbe. This was a letter that was written by the Alter Rebbe to the inhabitants, the Chassidim who lived in the Holy Land, which may be speedily rebuilt and established in our days. Amen, says the text, in order to console them with a redoubled support on on the passing of the Gaon, the genius, this renowned man who was a holy man of God, a light of Israel, a pillar, a right-hand pillar, a mighty hammer. So these are all different descriptions of this Rabbi Menachem Mendel, who is our teacher, our mentor, Rabbi Menachem Mendel. May his soul rest in Gan Eden. So here now the letter begins. So the letter begins with very endearing terms. The Alter Rebbe says, "My beloved, my brethren, my friends, who are as dear to me as my soul." He says, "May you all live forever. Your children and the seeds of truth, may you be blessed by Hashem forever and ever." After first asking about the welfare of those who love God's name. So, first he's sort of like making sure that his chassidim are okay. He said, "I came here to speak to the hearts of the downtrodden who are sighing and growing and over this passing of this righteous man, of this Rabbi Menachem Mendel, to console them with doubled and redoubled effort." And the way that the Alter Rebbe is going to console them is giving over to them something that he had heard and something that he had understood himself. So this was something that he himself had learned about the teaching, a famous teaching of the sages, which is the Shavak Chaim Lechol Chai, which is a famous saying that is often used, quoted by the sages, in reference to Atariq. After Atariq passes away, the Shavak Chaim Lechol Chai means he has left life for all the living. This is often like a common descriptor that's used after saying this tzaddik passed away. He has left life for all the living. So the Alter Rebbe is going to explore this saying a little bit. What does that mean? What does that mean exactly? That after a tzaddik passes away, he leaves life for all the living. So first of all, we have to understand, what is a tzaddik's life exactly? When we say that he leaves his life for all the living, what is it exactly? What is a tzaddik's life? So First of all, in order to explore the tzaddik's life, the Alter Rebbe brings a citation from Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 4, where it says, "Tzaddik b'emunato yichyeh." A tzaddik lives by his faith, meaning to say that the tzaddik's life is his faith. So there's something about emunah that is very tied up in a tzaddik's life. Then there's another citation here. This one's from Mishlei, chapter 19, verse 23, which says, "Yirat Hashem l'chaim." The awe of God is what leads to life. So we have the emunah, which is essential to life, faith. Then there's the fear of God, which is also tied into the life of a tzaddik. And then the Alter Rebbe here makes reference to a citation from Shir HaShirim, chapter 8, verse 6, which talks about the fiery flames of sparks of the love of God that the tzaddik loves more than his life. So these are three things basically that the Alter Rebbe is saying make up a tzaddik's life: his emunah, his yira, and his ava, his faith, his fear, and his love, all for God. And throughout the life of a tzaddik, he invests in these things, the entire life of his ruach and his nashama throughout his whole life. So just a little pause there in terms of ruach, these terminologies of ruach and nashama. So if you've been following along the podcast for a while, you know that we've referenced this idea that there are three basic levels of the soul, three essential levels of the soul that are found within the body. There's the level of the nefesh, which is just like the animating force within the body. That's the lowest part of the soul. Then we have the ruach, which is more like the spirit. It's often translated as. That's more associated with the emotional aspects of the soul, sort of like the passions in that way. And then you have the nashama, which is associated with the intellectual aspects of the soul. It's the highest level of the soul. And so what happens in the life of a tzaddik, which is interesting, after they pass away, the lowest part of their soul, the nefesh of the soul, actually stays connected to the body, which is why going to the gravesite of a tzaddik is so powerful, because there's a part of their soul that's still very much there. The nefesh of their soul is still there. The nashama of their soul gets elevated, that's the highest part, gets elevated back to God. But then the ruach, sort of the middle part, it's kind of, as we'll learn, sort of stays in this in-between place. It does go up, but there's a portion of the ruach that does get given over to his followers down here. So the Alter Rebbe says this. So the Alter Rebbe says that when the ruach of the tzaddik rises up to God, and the nashama gets gathered up into God, so the nashama totally gets swept up and elevated, and it lifts up to from level to level, one elevation to the next. Then the ruach, the life of the ruach, remains, and the deeds which he had been involved with. Within Israel, within the Jewish people. And then the Alter Rebbe brings a citation from Mishlei, chapter 10, verse 16, Pu'ulat tzaddik lechaim, the labor of a tzaddik for life, meaning that like a tzaddik's whole entire life is in this labor for the sake of God. So this is the ruach of the tzaddik. This is given over to every person. This becomes the nefesh of every person, the soul of every person. So the nefesh, again, is the lowest level of the soul, but that's like sort of like the life force of every soul. Which is bound to his soul with the thick ropes of his great love and his eternal love, because any man who desires life to cleave to the living God, so meaning to say that like God is the true life, as we've learned before, like if you really love your life, then you love God. That's the natural extension, because God is ultimately life, the source of all life. So through a person's service, they will attach their soul, and they will be bound up in the bond of life with God, with the life of the ruach of the breath of their nostrils. So this is like very poetic type of language, as we have said. And then here the Alter Rebbe quotes Eicha, chapter 4, verse 20, "Betzilo nichye v'goim." In its protective shadow, we will live amongst the nations. So meaning that, like, amongst like this life of God, like really attaching ourselves to God in our life, this will protect us amongst the non-Jewish nations. So this life of the tzaddik that we're talking about, his avoda, his service of God, he left this to all of us, each and every one of us, in accordance to the level of their sincere attachment to him, and with their love, with a true and pure love. And here's a citation from Tehillim, chapter 64, verse 7, Mikelev ish v'lev amok, from the innermost core of man and from the depths of his heart. Ki kamaim hapanim el hapanim. So this is a quote that we've cited often in the Tanya from Mishlei, chapter 27, verse 19, that from like water to water. So like there's that reflection again, that it's like when you really attach yourself to the tzaddik, then the tzaddik will attach herself to you. And ruach aiti ruach ve'amshich ruach. This is from the Zohar, that spirit rouses spirit and brings forth spirit. So basically it's like you get what you put out. So it's like if you attach yourself to the tzaddik will attach herself to you. And so through attaching yourself to the tzaddik, then the ruach of the tzaddik will stand in our midst. And when he will see that his children, meaning his followers, embody the work of his hands by sanctifying God's name, then God's name will be sanctified when we walk in a straight path, in one of his paths that he has shown us, and we will walk in his ways forevermore. So that's the end of the section. It's kind of cryptic and very, very poetic, and it's going to be elaborated upon more as we get deeper into the letter. But the main takeaway from here that we're taking is that a tzaddik's life is not a regular life. A tzaddik's life is very different. Their whole entire life is a devotion to God. They don't get caught up in the distractions of the world like most of us do. And so through this life, since they had such a pure life, then when they pass away, then it's like their passing is not complete. There's a part of themselves that gets left over, that stays here. And that part is accessible to their followers, to anybody who chooses to attach themselves to this righteous person who was associated with them in their lives. So that's where we'll leave off for today. And again, we're going to continue with this letter tomorrow, where we're going to get a little bit deeper into these ideas. So stay tuned, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.